begin tonight in Dallas County, where detectives are investigating the death of a mother and her little boy.
Seagoville police were called to a welfare check last week when relatives couldn't get in contact with them, and officers found the mother and son both unresponsive inside their home.
We're about to dive deep into the death of Lyric Backus and her 7-year-old son Deuce. And I'm warning you right now, by the time we're done here, you're going to have more questions than answers. You're going to be mad, and you should be. Because what happened on February 9th, 2024 in Seagoville, Texas, wasn't just a tragedy. It was a masterclass in how to make inconvenient people disappear and how to close cases so fast that the community doesn't even have time to process what really went down. Let me paint you a picture of Lyric Backus before we get into the nightmare that took her life. This woman was not your average struggling single mother trying to make ends meet. This was a boss, a legitimate entrepreneur who had built an empire called Lyric's Closet from absolutely nothing. We're talking about a boutique business that was pulling in serious money every single month, with over 200,000 followers hanging on her every word. When Lyric posted something, people bought it. No questions asked. She had mastered that thing most influencers spend years trying to figure out: how to turn your personal style into cold hard cash. But here's what made Lyric different from every other influencer out there chasing fame and followers. She was doing all of this while raising 7-year-old Deuce completely alone. And when I say alone, I mean alone. No baby daddy showing up to school pickup. No man splitting the bills. No father figure at parent-teacher conferences or birthday parties. For 7 years, not one person could get this woman to reveal who had helped her make that beautiful little boy. 7 years of carefully guarded silence about the most basic question anyone could ask. In a small community like Seagoville, population barely pushing 16,000, that kind of secret doesn't go unnoticed. This is the kind of place where everyone knows which car belongs to which family, where neighbors still wave from their front porches. And trust me, people noticed how Lyric always showed up to everything alone. They noticed the physical resemblances that don't lie. They noticed the whispers that followed her through Dallas's tight-knit social circles. Because the Dallas music scene is smaller than you think. Insiders know things. They recognize patterns. And sources in that scene had been whispering for years about alleged connections between Lyric and a prominent rapper. We're talking about someone with millions of followers, chart-topping hits, and everything to lose if certain truths came to light. For 7 years, Lyric apparently played by the rules. No public acknowledgement. No family photos. No father-son moments shared with the world. She built her empire, raised her son, and kept her mouth shut about the one thing everyone wanted to know. But here's what she might not have realized. Sometimes the very arrangement that provides security becomes the foundation for your destruction. February 9th, 2024, Lyric's 28th birthday. She had every reason to celebrate. Her business was thriving, her son was healthy and happy, and she'd built the kind of life most people only dream about. Her Instagram stories that morning showed her usual radiant smile, makeup perfectly applied, excitement radiating through the screen. Birthday girl mode activated. She captioned her morning selfie. The morning routine was typical. Getting Deuce ready for school, packing his backpack, sharing their usual mother-son banter over breakfast. She dropped him off at Seagoville North Elementary, waved goodbye through the window, and went to handle some business errands. Just another day in the life she'd built from nothing. By afternoon, Lyric had picked up Deuce from school. They stopped for snacks around 3:15 p.m., Deuce grabbing his favorite chips while Lyric filled up the tank. They were laughing, completely normal, completely unaware that these would be their final moments of joy. But here's where things get interesting. And by interesting, I mean suspicious. Sources close to Lyric say that her 28th birthday had become more than just a celebration. It had become a breaking point. After 7 years of keeping someone else's secret, after years of protecting a man who wouldn't even acknowledge her publicly, Lyric had apparently reached her limit. Friends say she'd been talking about setting the record straight, about telling her truth. Some even claimed she'd been drafting text messages. Messages that would expose everything she'd been hiding for 7 years. Whether those messages were actually sent on February 9th, we may never know. Because conveniently, Lyric's phone records from that day have never been made public. They arrived home to their Seagoville house just after 4 p.m. The same house where Lyric had built her empire, where Deuce had learned to ride his bike, where birthday celebrations had happened before. But what we know is that between 4 p.m. when they got home and 8 p.m. when friends started getting worried, something happened in that garage, something that would silence Lyric forever. When was the last time you went 4 hours without checking your phone? Without responding to a text, without posting on social media, on your birthday for that matter, because that's exactly what happened with Lyric. And for a woman whose entire business depended on staying connected, that should have been the first red flag. By 8 p.m., her best friend was calling repeatedly. By 9 p.m., family members were texting frantically. By 10 p.m., panic had set in. Lyric never missed important calls, never went silent on her birthday, never left people wondering where she was. At 11:47 p.m., the call that would change everything was made. Seagoville police responded to a welfare check after family and friends couldn't reach her for hours. What they found was a mother and son, unresponsive in their garage, with a car engine still running.
First, you hear the screams. Then moments later, you see the first responders. They're heading 2 doors down to this home, where 27-year-old Lyric Backus and her 7-year-old son Deuce were found dead in the garage.
Carbon monoxide poisoning, they said. Tragic accident. Case closed. Case closed already? Let me get this straight. A successful businesswoman and social media influencer dies under mysterious circumstances on her birthday, along with her child, and we're supposed to believe that's just an accident. No investigation into who might have wanted them gone. No looking into whether someone could have trapped them in that garage. No questions about why they were even in there in the first place. I've covered enough cases to know that when police close a case this fast, especially one involving someone with alleged connections to celebrity circles, somebody made a phone call, and that somebody has influence. The Seagoville Police Department wrapped this investigation up in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Let that sink in. No signs of forced entry, they said. No evidence of a struggle. No drugs, alcohol, or suicide note found. The car showed no mechanical issues. Lyric's phone was found dead in the car with no outgoing calls after 9:45 p.m. But here's what really gets me heated. The details they didn't release. No mention of how long the car had been running. No explanation for why a successful businesswoman and her young son would be sitting in a garage with a running car on her birthday. No discussion of whether the garage door opener had been tampered with. The timeline remained frustratingly vague. Even more troubling? The complete absence of any mention of witness interviews. In a residential neighborhood where houses sit close together, nobody heard a car running for hours. Nobody noticed anything unusual. And here's the million-dollar question. In 2024, cameras are everywhere. Doorbell cameras, security systems, traffic lights. Yet not a single piece of video evidence was released showing Lyric's final day. Ladies, when evidence disappears this fast and cases get closed this quietly, that usually means someone with money and power made sure it happened that way. Someone who had everything to lose if the investigation went too deep. Now I want you to think about something for a second. What woman, what mother, you know, pulls up to her house, hits the garage door to open it, pulls in, puts the car in park, closes the garage, and decides, oh, I'm gonna go to sleep now. The son is old enough to speak, and I'm sure he would have been saying, Mum, come on, let's go in the house, wake up. Even if he fell asleep in the car, it just doesn't make sense. None of it makes sense. But you know what the most telling part of this whole situation is? The professional silence that followed. While Seagoville mourned, while the community demanded answers, while Lyric's friends organized vigils and asked hard questions, the alleged father of her child, radio silence. Not a tweet, not an Instagram story, not even a generic RIP post. Nothing. Now, I want you all to think about this for a second. If someone you'd allegedly been connected to for 7 years died under mysterious circumstances along with a child who might be yours, what would your reaction be? Even if you had to keep the relationship private, wouldn't you find some way to acknowledge the loss? But this man couldn't even manage that. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that silence isn't just suspicious, it's calculated. Because when you say nothing, you can't be quoted. When you don't acknowledge someone publicly, you can't be connected to them legally. The community wasn't buying it though. But questions don't matter when the case is already closed and the people with answers aren't talking. The aftermath hit Seagoville like a shockwave. Within hours of the discovery, funeral arrangements were being made for a joint service, mother and son together, just as they were found. But here's what raised eyebrows throughout the community. According to some sources, someone with deep pockets allegedly stepped forward to cover all expenses. Now, who do you think that benefactor might have been? And more importantly, why would someone pay for a funeral but not show up to it? Because that's what was rumored to have happened. The community gathered to say goodbye to Lyric and Deuce on February 24, 2024, at Eternal Rest Funeral Home in DeSoto, Texas. Hundreds of people showed up. Friends, customers, neighbors, fellow entrepreneurs. The church was packed with people whose lives had been touched by this mother and son. But guess who was nowhere to be found? Go ahead, take a wild guess. Social media exploded with tributes and questions. Instagram stories flooded with memories, theories, and demands for answers. The influencer community, particularly Black women entrepreneurs, rallied together. They knew the struggle of building something from nothing while protecting your child. Their posts weren't just tributes, they were battle cries. Justice for Lyric started trending locally. Remember Deuce followed close behind. But for every post demanding answers, there was a corresponding silence from the one person everyone expected to hear from. The theories came fast and relentless. Some people pointed to carbon monoxide as a silent killer. Car malfunctioned. Tragic but explainable, they argued. Others suggested Lyric couldn't handle some unknown pressure we didn't know about. But the theory that wouldn't go away, the one that had people talking in barbershops and beauty salons across Dallas, was that this was no accident, that someone with everything to lose had finally decided Lyric knew too much. Now let me talk about something that's been eating at me since I started researching this case. When tragedy strikes, when innocent lives are lost, when a community mourns, we expect those connected to step forward. We expect statements, we expect presence, we expect basic human decency. But in the case of Lyric Backus and Little Deuce, the man allegedly connected to their lives chose a different path entirely. Complete and total silence. That silence is loud. Legal experts understand the strategy, right? When you're potentially connected to a high-profile death case, even tangentially, your attorney's first advice is simple: say nothing. Every word can be dissected, analyzed, used against you in ways you never anticipated. But this wasn't just any case. This involved a 7-year-old child who may have been his own flesh and blood. This involved a woman who had allegedly kept his secrets for 7 years. 7 years of loyalty, 7 years of protection, 7 years of building her life around keeping his comfortable. And when she dies under mysterious circumstances, when the community is crying out for answers, when Little Deuce, who might carry his DNA, is being lowered into the ground, not one word. The pattern here isn't unique though, and that's what makes it so infuriating. We've seen it before in the entertainment industry. When scandal threatens, when questions arise, when accountability comes knocking, the walls go up. Publicists craft carefully worded statements. Lawyers issue cease and desist orders. The celebrity machine protects the brand at all costs. Here's what keeps me up at night about this case, and what should keep you asking questions in these comments. If this truly was just a tragic accident, why not offer support to the grieving community? Why not honor the memory of a woman who had allegedly been part of your life? Why not acknowledge a child who may have carried your DNA? The questions multiply with each passing day. Was this silence guilt? Was it legal strategy? Was it simple indifference? Or was it something much more calculated? The final act of a man who had spent 7 years treating a woman and child like they were disposable. And let's talk about those text messages that apparently never got released. Because you know there had to be communication between Lyric and this alleged father. 7 years of relationship doesn't happen in complete silence. But more importantly, sources close to Lyric claim she'd been drafting messages in the weeks before her death. Messages that would have exposed everything she'd been keeping secret. Friends say she was tired of living in the shadows, tired of protecting someone who wouldn't protect her back. And on her 28th birthday, she may have finally decided to hit send on those messages that could have destroyed his carefully crafted image. But here's the million-dollar question. If those messages were sent, where are they now? Why haven't Lyric's phone records from February 9th ever been made public? What happened to the evidence that could have shown us exactly what she knew and who she was threatening to expose? The investigation wrapped up faster than a drive-through order, but the questions linger. Who benefits from keeping this case closed? Who had the influence to make sure certain evidence never saw the light of day? And why was the community's demand for answers met with such institutional silence? No toxicology reports have been publicly released. No detailed autopsy findings. No phone records. No surveillance footage. No witness interviews. For a case that allegedly involved no foul play, there sure seems to be a lot of missing information. And here's something interesting that nobody's talking about. Remember when I mentioned that prominent Dallas rapper who allegedly had connections to Lyric? Well, just this past March, that same man was arrested on entirely different charges. Capital murder charges in connection with the 2020 death of rapper Mo 3. He's scheduled for trial in February 2026. Now, I'm not saying these cases are connected, because they're not. But what I am saying is that patterns have a way of revealing themselves over time. And when you look at the way certain people in positions of power handle accountability, you start to see some troubling similarities. The Lyric Backus case remains officially closed as accidental death by carbon monoxide poisoning. The Seagoville Police Department has not reopened the investigation, and no new evidence has emerged to contradict their findings. But the community remembers, social media remembers, and the questions that were raised on February 9, 2024, are still echoing through Dallas today. So here's what I want to know from you in the comments. Should police departments be required to release 911 audio and dispatch logs in cases like this? Yes or no? And tell me why. Does your city require carbon monoxide detectors in garages? Drop your city plus yes or no. If you were police chief for one day, what's the one change you'd demand in how these investigations are handled? Once you look at this case, the mysterious circumstances, the rapid case closure, what do you see? Drop your thoughts below, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. This conversation needs to continue until we get the transparency this community deserves.